What if Padme Amidala's family adopted Anakin Skywalker after Qui-Gon died in The Phantom Menace? That's our story for today. It's a different take than I've ever done on Anakin before, so hope you guys enjoy this one. I really like it. So, also, subscribe because we're going to be announcing a lightsaber giveaway for 60,000 in the coming videos, so subscribe to be eligible for that, and let's get right into it. Our story begins on Naboo, during the funeral for Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, slain by the first Sith Lord seen in forever. Many important members of the Republic and the Jedi Order sit here now, watching Qui-Gon burn away, including Yoda, Windu, Obi-Wan, Palpatine, Padme, and of course, the young Anakin Skywalker. And as Anakin looked into the flames, watching Qui-Gon burn away, he remembered the Jedi Council, all of them staring into his soul, judging him based on how he feels. He hated it, but Qui-Gon was like a safety blanket for him, now suddenly ripped away. Anakin continued staring into the fire, and in the back of his mind he heard voices, screaming, pain, and it was like he was seeing something deep inside of the fire. Himself, perhaps. A voice echoed out, saying, "You were the chosen one," and "I hate you." But Anakin snapped out of it, as Obi-Wan patted him on the shoulder, asking if he was alright. Anakin nodded, then asked what was going to happen next. Obi-Wan said that he would train him, and Anakin smiled, then looked to the ground. Is that truly what he wanted? As the funeral was concluding, and the Jedi were all speaking with each other, Anakin walked down to the lake and looked into it. He'd never seen something so beautiful on Tatooine. He loved it here on Naboo. The lakes, the warm breeze, the beautiful palace, the people. It was all so perfect. And as Anakin sat here on the grass, someone came up behind him. It was Padme. Anakin was happy to see her, and she asked Anakin if he was alright. Anakin was about to say yes, but was he? Not really. So he just told the truth, saying that he knows the Jedi don't want him, and he doesn't want to go there. He feels lost. Padme sat next to him, and said that perhaps his life is not one with the Jedi. She feels like he can be a hero outside of the Jedi Order, and he should come stay with her family. Anakin's face immediately lit up, and he asked if she was sure. Padme smiled gently, and said that her family would welcome him with open arms. And the decision was made. Anakin would live with Padme and her family. When Anakin told Obi-Wan and Yoda of this news, they accepted it. Yoda was relieved, while Obi-Wan figured that if Anakin was happy, he could find closure in not fulfilling Qui-Gon's promise. And they all said their goodbyes. Padme was right about the family welcoming him in with open arms. Her mother, Jobal, set up the guest room for Anakin to stay in and gave Anakin a hug, telling him and Padme to sit down for a nice meal. The father, Ruwei, sat with them and took genuine interest in where Anakin was from, why he didn't want to go with the Jedi. Most people only knew stories of the Jedi, so hearing from someone who stood inside of the Jedi Council was super interesting. Padme also had a sister, Sola, roughly the same age as Padme. She too was kind and welcoming to Anakin. The entire family could tell that Anakin felt awkward about this all, but they helped him adjust to the new life. The first few days were spent with the family just allowing Anakin to sort of find his place in all of this. Anakin had to adjust his life quite a bit. Instead of waking up scared for whether or not he and his mother would be beaten, or whether he would get to eat a meal that day, have enough water, everything was good now. He would still wake up in the middle of the night because of Tatooine nightmares, and the mother, Jobal, helped him to calm down and go back to sleep. Over time, the nightmares would fade. Anakin couldn't believe that every day he had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but he loved it. He was happy here, and before long, Ruwei would bring Anakin to the school that he was teaching in, and Anakin was put in a regiment for refugee children who ended up on Naboo. For the first time in his life, Anakin was going to school. There was not Chosen One rumors or Jedi talks, and instead, Anakin was just fitting in as another kid. Ruwei was an instructor at the school, and he took pride in teaching Anakin. He was eager to learn, and the days would go by so quickly. As for Padme, she was rarely home, as she was the queen of Naboo. But as the days went by, Anakin would lose romantic feelings, as she was more like a sister than anything else. Anakin would slowly start to open up more during family dinners, talking about how he never really had a home. Home was always where his mother was. Anakin would say through tears in his eyes that he did miss her quite a bit. The family would comfort Anakin, telling him that he should never have to worry about that. His home is here now. They also remarked that slavery is a stain on the galaxy, and Naboo does eventually plan to to lead a campaign to free slaves in the Outer Rim. Perhaps Anakin will be a part of that group, they said, and Anakin felt some relief. Around age 12 to 13, Anakin would often complete his studies down by the lake with a view of the palace. He always felt better when thinking about the palace, the way it shimmered in the sunlight, the way the air around him always smelled like flowers, how the soft sound of the distant waterfalls was always there. Anakin would never take for granted how beautiful everything was here compared to Tatooine. The days would go on, and eventually Anakin would find himself training with the Naboo Royal Guard. This was a group of mostly volunteers, but the head of the security forces was Captain Panaka, and he took Anakin under his wing, seeing the potential in the young boy. For 3 years, Anakin would split time between schooling and training in the Royal Guard, and it was quickly evident that Anakin could be a valuable member of the Guard. Anakin always knew that he had the Force inside of him, just hidden away. He didn't think he knew how to use it, but in reality, it was showing itself in training all the time. Anakin was able to jump higher, run faster, shoot any blaster just as good as anyone else. For some of the training, the Naboo Guard would rewire old battle droids from the Naboo blockade with low-level stun blasts, and they would go up against them. Anakin was always able to complete the training missions with ease, until one night, he asked Panaka to bring as many droids as he could to the field near his home. Panaka would bring 50 B-1 droids, and when he wasn't looking, Anakin would switch their blasters to be real, lethal blasts, rather than stun blasts. With Panaka, Padme, Sola, and the parents watching, Anakin lined up on one side of the field as the 50 droids stood on the other, and Panaka activated them. Anakin ran in, and the droids began firing. Immediately, everyone was scared because the droids weren't using stun blasts, but Padme told them to wait. With a smile, she said Anakin knew what he was doing, and they all watched as Anakin ran at the droids, dodging blasts like they were in slow motion, then slid into the group, using a vibro blade to cut into the legs of a handful of the droids. Anakin jumped onto one of them, then flipped backwards, using his blaster to take out 10 more before landing. Anakin then picked up 2 broken droids, using them as shields, firing his blaster between them to take out more droids. He then dove behind a rock, throwing a droid popper into the air before sniping it perfectly, resulting in 10 more droids dropping. And with just 10 left, Anakin flipped off of the rock, landing behind the droids, and he moved to each one individually, cutting them apart with his blade. And the last droid fell to the ground. Panaka looked to the family, and said that perhaps Anakin is ready for more advanced missions, off-world. Over the next week, Anakin would spend much more time around the family, as he was preparing to be the second in command on a mission to Tatooine with Padme's handmaiden Sabe. The Naboo mission to free slaves was beginning, and it would be a month-long expedition, so Anakin spent time with everyone, especially his adopted sister Padme, who he got along with the most, despite disagreeing on some things politically. The final night before leaving, Anakin, Padme, and Sola had a picnic down by the waterfalls, laughing, remembering the good times together. Times were changing a lot now. The Republic was seeing planets leave to join a rumored separatist movement, and now Padme, Senator of Naboo, had a lot of work to work on, and 16-year-old Anakin was about to go on his first off-world mission, while Sola recently met someone, and was preparing to move out of the family home to pursue a marriage. When the sun set, they all went to sleep with the good memories. The next day, as Anakin was flying through hyperspace in a Naboo transport with Sabe and 10 Naboo Royal Guard members, he began talking to Sabe. Anakin honestly found her to be quite attractive, but the more Anakin tried awkwardly flirting with her, the more Sabe just continued to laugh until she told Anakin that she wasn't into his kind. Anakin was relieved to know that it wasn't just him being bad at flirting. Sabe just wasn't into guys. And so, of course, 16-year-old Anakin pried heavily into things until he asked Sabe about Padme. Anakin always could feel things through the air, almost like a sixth sense, and when he brought up Padme, he could feel Sabe's connection to her, and Anakin smiled, thinking perhaps he could set the two of them up after returning to Naboo. Anakin, of course, didn't really know that this sixth sense was the Force. He never tried to use the Force, it would just come to him naturally when fighting, or when trying to read people. Without proper training, his immense Force powers were just dormant, waiting to be unleashed. The ship would eventually land, and as Anakin walked down the ramp, the sand hit him in the face, and every terrible memory he tried to get rid of came back to him. But Anakin pushed them away, only remembering his mother now. His mother that he was here to save. So over the next week, Sabe, Anakin, and the Naboo royal guards would go to slave auctions, and they would negotiate their way into buying 25 of them, including Shmi Skywalker. It was not an easy process, and it was risky for Republic officials to be out here doing this. But Sabe and the 16-year-old Anakin did as much as they could for now. Anakin and Shmi would share an excellent reunion, and plans were made for the slaves to be transported to Carlinus to start a new, free life. Unfortunately, not every slave owner was okay with this. They were all selfish, evil, smug, and thinking they were above everyone else. And as the slaves were getting ready to leave, a group of slave owners, including a Zagirian, came up to the slaves and started trying to instigate them, calling them horrible names, and Anakin was on edge. He wanted to slaughter them all, if we're being honest, but Shmi told Anakin to remain calm. But a moment later, the Zagirian pushed Shmi into a wall. She slammed her head into it, falling to the ground in a heap. The Zagirian laughed, asking Anakin what he was going to do about it, but before he could even get the last word out of his mouth, Anakin punched him in the face, denting his skull, and he died quickly on the ground. And now, everyone stood still for about 5 seconds. Sabe, the Naboo guard, and Anakin waited, as suddenly the slave owners yelled in anger, pulling out knives and blasters, and began firing at the group. Anakin pulled out his own blaster and fired back, quickly killing 3 of the slave owners, and the Naboo guard held up shields, guiding the freed slaves onto a transport. Shmi yelled at Anakin to hurry and get with them, but Anakin was still fighting, flipping from one slave owner to another, kicking, punching, shooting, stabbing. It didn't matter. He enjoyed this. Shmi ran after Anakin, trying to get him on the ship, and one of the slave owners threw a vibroblade at Anakin, and he easily leapt over it, shooting him in the chest. But suddenly, Anakin heard a gasp from behind him. The thrown knife went right into the chest of Shmi, and she stumbled backwards, falling to the ground as blood came from her mouth. Anakin felt himself go numb. He ran to her, but she only looked up to Anakin, smiled gently, and died in his arms. Anakin felt nothing, but then he felt sadness, rage, anger, pain, suffering. And as the remaining 7 slave owners got around Anakin, he lifted his head. Pounds of sand around Anakin lifted into the air, and with a piercing scream, Anakin turned around, unleashing a wave of force energy, sending the rest of the slave owners, including Watto, slamming into a wall and dying immediately. The sand was lifted into the air, and Anakin was surrounded by it, and he ran away. He failed to protect his mother. As the sand cleared, Sabe saw the dead bodies, and she noticed that Anakin was gone. He just disappeared into the sand, and Sabe sent the Naboo guard to find him, as she looked to Shmi, dead on the sandy floor. But Anakin wasn't coming back. How could he? He just basically got his mother killed, then used his anger to kill everyone around. He remembered the Jedi Council, saying he was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too angry. Were they right? Could Anakin truly not control his emotions? That was a question he had to learn for himself, as he infiltrated Watto's junkyard, stole a ship, and flew into space to begin a new life. Alone. Over the next 3 years, as Padme worked hard in the Senate to limit the separatist movement from being created, Sola began raising a family. The parents worked on their home from Naboo. Everyone wondered what happened to Anakin. He went missing after the events of Tatooine, and they could only hope he was okay. But Anakin was doing more than okay. Instead of dwelling on his emotions, Anakin hid them away, and instead poured all of his energy into becoming a sort of bounty hunter, though almost like a Robin Hood type. Anakin would travel to world after world, fight for those who could not fight for themselves. Criminal gangs, rich and corrupt politicians, and anyone else who was taking advantage of peaceful people just trying to live their lives would become enemies to Anakin Skywalker. He was like a shadow in the dark, taking out enemies before they ever even saw them, then returning whatever was stolen back to the people, while also keeping enough to keep himself going. He did miss his family quite a bit, but he had to do this for himself. For years, Anakin trained himself to become a warrior, and he would learn to harness the Force, being able to throw objects, use mind tricks, read other people, and just use all of his abilities to do what must be done. He would travel from Rhodia to Cato Nemoidia, countless planets, and after these 3 years, Anakin would travel to Moonalist and be tracking a man called San Hill. Many Muns were going broke or bankrupt because San Hill was stripping their funds to pay for a separatist droid army, and Anakin was hired to bring him down. Anakin tracked him into a secret building, through the vents and into an office, where Hill was meeting with someone. To Anakin, it looked to be Dooku, who Anakin knew from separatist propaganda across the galaxy. Dooku was a hologram here, telling Hill that he just transferred a huge payment from a source that cannot be discovered. Hill said that he will accept the funds and then delete all records. Dooku said this was good, as he was going to meet with Chancellor Palpatine on Bothawai to discuss a peace option before war starts, and he ended the call. Not a second later, Anakin leapt from his hiding place, stabbing Sandhill in the spine. The Mun gasped, then fell dead to the ground, as Anakin accessed what was going on here. He sorted through all of the data, and Anakin discovered something insane. The huge payment Dooku referenced, trillions of dollars, came from the office of the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. And Anakin was the only one with the truth in the entire galaxy. Palpatine and Dooku are working together to create this war. Anakin thought of Padme working tirelessly to stop this war, and he knew none of it mattered. The two leaders were working together. This made Anakin angry, two puppet masters playing the entire galaxy. But then Anakin remembered something. Dooku just mentioned that he was meeting Palpatine on Bothawai to discuss peace. Obviously, this meeting would just be used to create more division, but Anakin had an opportunity to end it all before a war could ever truly begin. So, he took off to Bothawai. On the surface of Bothawai, Dooku of the Separatists and Palpatine of the Republic were meeting in a monumental moment for the galaxy. They were seated just outside of a forest and near a mountain landscape on a cliffside, with battle droids and Coruscant security all around them. And Anakin landed way far away from them, with a sniper with 2 shots available to it. He set himself up nicely on a cliffside, with the wind blowing all around him, and he took a distant aim at Palpatine and Dooku. He was a truly elite sniper, without knowing that it was the Force that gave him this ability, and Anakin took aim from extremely far away. This was going to be easy. But a second later, before Anakin could pull the trigger, he heard a jetpack behind him, and he turned to dodge a pistol blast from a Mandalorian bounty hunter. Of course, Dooku hired Jango Fett to keep watch for assassins. Jango told Anakin that he was making too much money to let Anakin do this, and the two of them leapt into action. Anakin unleashed a quick barrage of blaster bolts from his Naboo pistol, each shot helped by the power of the Force, but Jango dodged each one rather easily, his jetpack propelling him out of the way as he returned fire with his own blaster pistols. Anakin flipped backwards behind a rock as Jango deployed his wrist-mounted flamethrower, sending a wave of fire towards Anakin. Anakin summoned the Force, creating a barrier, then sent the flames back at Jango, sending him flying to the ground. Now Anakin moved in, but Jango bent over, shooting a rocket towards Anakin from his back, and Anakin leapt over it, catching the missile, throwing it back at Jango with a flip. The bounty hunter flew into the air to avoid it, now meeting Anakin in a fight. The two of them landed on the ground, engaging in hand-to-hand combat, their blows echoing against the sheer walls of the cliff. Jango pulled out a blade and was able to stab it right into Anakin's shoulder, and Anakin let out a scream of pain. But then he pulled Jango towards him, kicking the bounty hunter to the ground, pulling the blade from his shoulder, and jamming it right into Jango's jetpack. The jetpack malfunctioned, and Jango began to be thrown across the ground. There were only a few moments until he was going to regain himself, so Anakin grabbed his sniper, knowing he had time for just one shot, and now he aimed down the barrel of a Separatist tank. As Jango landed, Anakin fired one shot at the tank, then another at Jango. As Jango was shot in the shoulder and knocked off of the cliff, Anakin watched as the other shot pierced right through the barrel of the tank, creating a chain reaction explosion. The tank exploded and caused everything else around it to explode, as both Dooku and Palpatine were caught in the explosions, dying immediately as the mountainside collapsed and fell far into the ground below. A few days later, Anakin would return to Naboo, and he was greeted with welcoming hugs from the entire family. Sola and her 2 daughters met Anakin for the first time, and they were all just so happy to see that Anakin was alright. He told everyone that he just had to travel the galaxy alone, find himself and his purpose, and so he did. Anakin would soon learn that with the deaths of Palpatine and Dooku, the Senate was able to organize a peace treaty with the help of Padme and Mina Bonteri, head of the Separatist Senate. The corrupt Separatist leaders, such as Newt Gunray, Wat Tambor, Poggle the Lesser, were separated from everything and arrested as true negotiations began, as the Republic legitimately listened to why the Separatists left the Republic. The deaths of Palpatine and Dooku were a mystery to some. Some said there was an earthquake, others said it was the Jedi, some said it was an assassin. No one knew the truth, except for Anakin. In an extensive investigation into Palpatine after his death, many records were discovered between him and Dooku. It was found that the two of them carefully manipulated the Senate, aided various crime organizations, corrupted financial institutions, and created hatred from the Mid-Rim planets to the Republic, essentially creating the Separatist movement. With Palpatine and Dooku's plans exposed, the Republic would rebuild under Chancellor Padme Amidala and Vice Chancellor Mina Bonteri for many years. Anakin would end up fulfilling one of his promises, subtly hinting to Padme that Sabe was in love with her, and the two of them would end up falling in love and getting married, while Anakin continued living life on Naboo as the new head of Naboo security. Over the years, Anakin would find his own wife, and he would have children of his own, with a house on the Naboo lake, living out his peaceful life with his happy family. And folks, that is our story for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was just a fresh perspective on Anakin, really just starting his life fresh, right out of the Phantom Menace. Instead of going to the Jedi Temple, goes to Naboo and just has no relations to the Jedi, nothing to Palpatine, nothing to anyone. So, I thought that was a lot of fun. Padme's family in the deleted scenes of Attack of the Clones really inspired this. I was just watching that last night because I'm a degenerate who just can't stop watching things. But, yeah, I was like, what would be a great video? And so, I spent a lot of time writing, recording, and soon editing this one. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you guys enjoyed the rather quick death of Palpatine and Dooku, but they did actually organize a meeting in Legends. It never happened, but I decided to make that meeting happen in this video to have Anakin snipe them after defeating Jango. You can, in your own headcanon, determine whether or not Jango survived this video. That's up to you. Otherwise, yeah, Anakin and Padme obviously not falling in love because they're siblings, and that's weird. So, appreciate you guys listening. Anakin gets a wife in the end. And yeah, Padme and Sabe actually, I decided to model that because in the comics, I think Sabe reveals that she was in love with Padme, but obviously Padme married Anakin. So I decided, hey, what if we did the opposite of that? Anyways, appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe for the upcoming lightsaber giveaway, and I'll see you in the next video.